We've discussed in previous episodes that the alt-right is really like this mix of various beliefs and motives, right? But when it comes to religion, it seems apparent that these racialized versions of religious practice and these pro-white religious positions they're fairly consistent in that manner. So can you elaborate on the history and implications of this for us?
Yeah, the notion that if a religion or any ideology really is pro-white comes down to sort of the basic foundation of American white nationalism, and that's the idea that that whatever's good for the white race is good. So if it advances those interests, then they might be inclined to be okay with it. So you see this with developments in what was called the North American New Right, uh, where you had many of those involved in that movement advocating for this sort of religious toleration for the purpose of accomplishing the political goal of securing the future of the white race. And then you would have that echoed on websites like Stormfront, where independent people who were posting on that board would say the same thing. One person actually said, "I don't care if you're for the flying spaghetti monster. If you can make it pro-white, then it's
Mm.
okay." But again, there are still others who are convinced that either A, their religious point of view is not respected, and by and large they would be Christian, or that their religious point of view informed by, you know, for example, Norse paganism, or at least a racialized expression of Norse paganism, needs to be at the center of this identitarian movement, then they would be disinclined to agree that simply being pro white in this broad sense is meaningful. And of course, as I found with those who are activists outside the context of the United States, their boundaries aren't necessarily white or black. The way they understand ethnic difference is more complicated. So the being pro-white doesn't necessarily mean
Mm,
anything important for them. So they want to maintain British ethnicity
Mm.
in the context of
yeah, yeah.
some Australian activists, for example. So it
Mhm.
gets again that's it's extremely diverse and elusive and constantly shifting around.
One of the other things that you've written about is this conspiratorial sense of collective victimhood as the element that directly characterizes the ideology of the alt-right. So, in fact, you've stated that what seems to be driving the previous political successes is also motivating the terrorism. So, can you tell us more about this? What drives these beliefs, and exactly how dangerous can this become?
Yeah, I mean, the very beginnings of American white nationalism come out of this idea that Europeans are an embattled global minority, uh, picking up on this much older discourse of, the idea of this rising tide of color, that the world's lesser races are numerically overwhelming Europeans, and if they continue to fight, as Charles Lindbergh said, in these fratricidal wars, they'll be overrun. And that kind of conspiratorial narrative continues through these white nationalist organizations all the way up through even Richard Spencer's rhetoric when he's talking about what the alt right really means. For him, it's about preserving European heritage, culture, and biological integrity for the future. And of course, behind that is this fear, this anxious
Mhm.
paranoia that somehow Europeans are an endangered species, and that their culture is this static thing that's attached to their biology. And if Europeans disappear, then European culture disappears, and mankind doesn't advance, or something like that. But even at a more subtle level, I mean, some of the independent acts of terrorism by people who probably are not would not be affiliated by the alt-right, and certainly wouldn't be claimed by members of the alt-right. They're motivated by these similar ideas, right? So the shooting in El Paso, the shooting in Poway, uh, in Pittsburgh, the synagogue. These are all motivated by people who express very clearly, like Dylan Roof, that they thought what they were doing was in defense of their race, or in defense of their culture, or in defense of the nation. And of course, this maps on perfectly to the kind of racialist discourse that we found in Trump's campaign about Mexicans invading the border and overwhelming the country, and the list goes on. So,
Mhm.
I think the most significant part about that discussion is the overlap between the conspiratorial narratives and how you find this expression not just in the alt right, but in the very political campaigns of people who will hold office.